So, when it comes to the toxic habits, what do you think are a few that your generation sort of struggles with?
What are toxic traits or toxic personalities to watch the heck out for when you are looking for a romantic partner? I'm actually really curious. Welcome to 30 Minute You, the university launched for you, where your co-hosts go over real-world topics through a live mentorship podcast so you can walk away with the skills you need to succeed in your field in only 30 minutes. My name is Meer, one of the co-hosts, and I host one of the world's top mentorship platforms, where I interview people like the mayor of Miami, the founder of Reebok, and the former CEO of Chipotle to provide you real-life mentorship in your pocket.
And my name is Carmen. Over the last 10 years, I've launched over 70 companies spanning in industries like hospitality, real estate, retail, and cannabis. With hundreds of employees, I am an investor, lawyer, and educator.
And we hope you enjoyed listening to this show as much as we enjoyed recording it. We'll see you inside the classroom. How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to 30 Minute You. We are on our fourth installment. It's crazy. Just like yesterday, we were speaking about this idea, and now we're 4 episodes deep. There's an interesting statistic that most podcasters don't make it past their 3rd episode. Here, Carmen and I are on number 4, and we're hoping to keep going. If you guys notice, whether you're watching or listening, I'm rocking my Sherlock merchandise, which we have here. We're going to be repping our own stuff going forward, not these weird brands. We're doing our clothes, our brands. Carmen, what does this mean, by the way?
So that is, the clothing brand is Sur le Lac. It's French for on the lake. It is a Chicago-based streetwear. This was a collaboration, which you're wearing, with Joy District. And those drop, I think, next month. We've done 4 drops. This will be our 5th. We're coming out with some leather jackets, satin bombers, jeans. It's been fun, but a totally new experience in industry for me. They say an entrepreneur's lifestyle and approach to business is pretty uniform, and I would largely agree with that. But fashion is a different beast. But it's been a lot of fun. So I appreciate the love. But yeah, surlelac.co, or you can go on Instagram and all that jazz.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you getting me the fresh drop before everyone else gets it. As the co-host, shout out to you. I know Carmen, as you guys can see. I'll kick us off because we have so much to talk about. It's been a little bit. There's so much going on, from all the craziness in the world to AI, but we have so much to talk about. Today we're going to talk about the right mindset and toxic personalities. So having a powerful mindset, but toxic traits, toxic personalities to avoid. But before that, there is a hot take that we got to talk about. If you're just tuning in, this is going to go live very shortly within the next week. First Republic Bank went under today. So this is the first time since 2008 that we've seen the largest bank failure. First one was Washington Mutual. They had over $300 billion in assets. First Republic was not small by any means. It might be a regional bank. A massive bank failure after we just saw Silicon Valley Bank just a month ago, right?
Signature Bank.
Signature Bank, the cryptocurrency one. And now First Republic. What's your take on this? I mean, us Gen Zs haven't seen banks fail. Like, this is insane.
I like that we are taking a hot take for a present headline and moving it up to the front, because we should all listeners, all generations, while you're riding the train, the bus, or standing at the proverbial water cooler, or grabbing a pint with your buddies, there should be some healthy dialogue as to what this means. I think, first of all, First Republic Bank, just to give, and we got to do this quick because I know we got some other stuff to talk about here, but it's the 2nd largest bank in history. It outperformed BOA and JPM in equities, but just on a performance stock. But their issue is in large part because they were considered a smaller bank. They suffered massive withdrawals when the confidence was shook at the outset of 23, so January, February. By March, with $70 billion withdrawn, I won't say ironic, but the unfortunate part is they had a ton of great assets, low risk, because they were, part of their appeal was going to very successful enterprises, very sophisticated investors, and saying, hey, we'll give you a really low interest rate and we'll give you the 5 diamond in service if you move your stuff over here. And when you're talking interest rates of 3 to 3.5%, I mean, that is as low as you'll hear. But they were getting, of course, then the attention of some of the nation's most powerful. And their marketing thought was, okay, the most powerful will then tell their social networks and sales, clients become salesmen. And they were right. What they got caught with is an unfortunate time in the larger banking picture. And so, they collapsed. And now Jamie Dimon is certainly JP Morgan I'm a big Dimon disciple, but they're already the biggest bank. They had 10% of deposits. Now, once they take in the selective First Republic, if you're a JPM stockholder, you're going to look really strong because, and we're still learning how this will work, but the FDIC is sharing in the losses. So JP will probably have any negativity or negative toxic assets and come out of this looking great. But the larger point is, I've gone over the limit on this, but here's my hot take, and here's what you asked me. Should we be concerned or alarmed that a bank failed? And if you read the headlines, or if you're a doom and gloom investor or a hater, you'll say yes. And we're seeing that. And what's cool about documenting with podcasts is I'll be right or wrong in the future. We'll find out. I don't think this is big news or brooding foreshadowing. A bank is a business, and today a business failed. And in any other industry and in any other market, businesses and enterprises fail, and we don't blink. And in this situation, a bigger bank is touted as a true winner, JP Morgan. Query as to the extent, if you wanted to pick it apart, does the U.S. government share responsibility in the losses by sharing them through the FDIC? Whether there's issues there, but I don't blame JP Morgan for using the system. So to me, it's the second largest bank in U.S. history to fail. That's newsworthy, but I don't think it's indicative of a collapse, no.
Let me ask you before we transition into our topic for today. Obviously, as a business owner and the multitude of businesses you have and the employees you have, you guys have banks. You bank with certain banks. What does this do for you, if anything at all, when you look at the diligence of where the profits are held from your businesses or banking in general, if at all, anything? Again,
no matter who the listener is, you have to make an assumption, and that is that I'm not completely full of in which case you shouldn't listen to anything I say if you're selling that. But otherwise, a collapse of individual accounts it could be imagined. So part of First Republic Bank's issue is most of their customers that did not leave them were at very low interest rates. Well, what happens when, because of the rising interest rates, you're left to borrow at almost double? You're looking at your low interest. I mean, you're holding a negative balance sheet, and you're probably getting very few little customers, and you're getting droves of customers to leave. But let's just say that started happening to every bank, and they had to start. This is what happened in 2008. When banks have to start calling your note, I've got more than a half dozen banks, maybe more than 10 if I paused and thought about it. If tomorrow all of them called the mortgages to my buildings, this might be my full-time job is podcasting. I'd be done. And that's how that we can see would be cataclysmic and of devastation. That's not what happened here necessarily. And for First Republic, for their customers, they're now becoming Chase customers. They're reorganizing. Their limits on the insured amounts are being shared by the government. As a result of 2008, there's a ton more stopgaps. There's a ton more regulations to ensure this doesn't happen. So I don't see it as the same thing, but there's an example of how, I could be wiped out in a day should that happen. I just don't think that because of these three banks collapsing, the rest are going to fall and no one's going to pick it up.
Yeah, I think that is extremely reassuring. And with that being said, this translates perfectly into the topic, which is strong personality, having a strong, powerful mindset, and what to look out for with a toxic person, toxic traits, toxic personality, because evidently you have to have a strong mindset to go in every day in business, because you are right. What happens if they call your notes tomorrow? Can you handle it? Can you mentally handle the emotional damage of going bankrupt? The people, there's so much. So let's set that foundation. Let's talk about this strong mindset you speak about.
Sure. It's actually one of the things, let me rephrase. One of the things I like most about our podcast, and I think what allows us the freedom to actually participate and do this, is the amount of time and preparation we each put into it is very limited.
Yes.
And unlike probably more organized and obviously more successful podcasts that do spend so much more time in the due diligence and prep, there is something to be said about the intimacy of live conversation. So when we'd mention this topic and we're doing it by design in a short amount of time, I think everybody clicks on the title or clicks on the asset of having a powerful mindset and like going to the gym and training your mind to be strong and powerful and doing your exercises. I think query as to anybody is taking the under on that, right? We're all buying. I think the trick and part of that sort of workout regimen is identifying the toxicity and really improving your weaknesses, right? It's the guy in the gym with massive arms and skinny little chicken legs, and sort of balancing that portfolio of strength. I think the biggest obstacle in sort of achieving the self-awareness, it's the tendency to avoid the discomfort of who you really are, right? One of the most important things, what I'm saying is one of the most important things we can do to be more self-aware of our strengths is embrace it by also acknowledging what our shortfalls are. And we don't like to do that. We want to avoid the discomfort of accepting who we really are. And I think that once, we're talking about powerful mindset, I like the little tricks and exercises, right? The sort of 10 minutes when you jump out of bed to do this every day, the 100 crunches and sit-ups that you do. There are those, but before we get into that, let's talk about some of that toxicity. I want to piggyback really quick. You'll recall on one of our previous conversations, we were talking about, I think it was a hot take too, it was about being present.
Yep.
The only reason I remember this is because when I posted the link, I had more than usual responses about how people really appreciated putting the phone away and really being present in the moment. And so, of course, then just seeing that, it made me peel a few more layers. And it's really, what are you communicating when your phone is out to somebody sitting across you? I want to be somewhere else. I'm checking my social media feed because those moments look more exciting than these moments. I'm texting because this conversation apparently is more important than this. And so one of the larger, like a powerful mindset, I think, nobody would disagree if we put under the column of being authentic. Like be authentic and present, be authentic and listening and sharing what they want to, what they're saying and participating in the conversation. On the topic of little shots of advice, you tell me if you've got a more popular one, but the one I hear the most is fake it till you make it. I don't know if there's a saying I hate more than fake it till you make it. And maybe because I don't get it, maybe I'm not understanding what the right example is, but I think it's very disingenuous. It's not authentic. It's not realistic. You're avoiding who you really are, and because of the discomfort it may have. I want to use a different one. Meer, I'm going to ask you, have you ever seen the movie Glengarry Glen Ross?
I actually haven't, but
that's the signature difference between you and I and Gen Z and millennial is because every pop culture reference I make, you're just looking at me wide-eyed. So please go see this movie. It is a incredible character exposition on salesmen, and there's no gun scenes, no sex scenes. It's basically shot in the same room, so your generation may not find it enticing at all, but there's a very famous line that Alec Baldwin gives, and he writes it on the board. And maybe you've seen this: ABC, always be closing. And when it comes to salesmen, that's right. That the idea is that we're always on top of it. To me, that is less relevant to modern times than my ABC is, and I shouldn't say my as in I made it, but always be connecting. And then if we really look at like, okay, well, I am connecting. I'm on my phone. I'm in the office. I'm on 9 different social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn. I am connecting. I look at it. I always be engaging. Your connecting needs to have a definition. What does connecting mean? It can't be that you're plugged into the internet. It has to be, the connecting portion of it is that I am authentic. I am present. I am making a connection that is material. So, when it comes to the toxic habits, what do you think are a few that your generation sort of struggles with?
I think the biggest struggles that I see with my generation toxic habits is we've become very presumptuous. That's one that you might not hear as much, which is this idea of, oh, he or she didn't text me back. What could they be thinking? Or, Carmen, I don't know, this person unfollowed me. Like, we start assuming the worst in these situations. And I didn't realize it was a toxic thing. I used to think this sense of cynicalism is sort of healthy. But, just getting to know you and having conversations with you, I started realizing, like, that is such a toxic habit to always think negative. Why did Carmen not say hi to me when I saw him at the club? Why is it an assumption that it always has to be negative? What if it was the flip side and be like, wait, maybe he didn't see me, or maybe this person didn't text me because X happened. I've really started to see, and I struggle with it too, honestly. It always goes to the negative.
Yeah, so I want to run with that. So there is
That's toxic, right?
Of course, there is this common place that is overpopulated in the attitude of wanting something better. I want something more out of this experience. I want something more out of this relationship. I want something more out of my job. I'm not happy with my salary. I want the promotion. By the way, that sounds ambitious, and we're not putting down ambition. I think a serious issue that I've noticed more present with young professionals is this attitude that they want their MVP contract before their MVP breakout performance. They want to start with the MVP contract. Like, they were drafted number 1. We all know who was drafted number 1. And it's not everyone. Yeah. We are graduating in large numbers. We're in corporate America in large numbers. We're driving the train and the bus in large numbers. We need to earn our MVP breakout performance if we want the MVP contract. The aspiration and the ambition to wanting that MVP, performance contract, that's wonderful. But you can't put before that the work and the grind that it takes. Like, get your shoes off my desk and get back to work. If you say that in the workplace today, you might get sued. I mean, canceled at best. Huge, yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and by the way, this is, I was thinking about this idea, not this idea, but I was thinking about, I'm not a LeBron fan. I'm a Jordan loyalist. I don't think it's one or the other, but it's just the way it is for me. And I was, this next series between Golden State and the Lakers, the cool thing, and LeBron
7 years
plays a role in this, but they've made it now to the second round of the playoffs. Technically, whatever, forget all the play-in stuff.
They were 8 seed, right?
Yeah, I think that. Yeah. So now that they're in, you start to look at you're paying more attention to their roster. Austin Reeves, Dennis Schroeder, Thomas Bryant, those 3 guys on the Lakers, high level performance. Austin Reeves is making $1.6 million. Dennis Schroeder is making $2 million, and Bryant's making, I think, under $2 million. Their performances this year far outweigh their salary. Max Strus of the Miami Heat terrorized the Bulls in that game that they beat us. But then is dominating in the playoffs. He's making $1.6 million. I mean, and now the expectation is that those performances are going to come with reward, but that makes sense. Like they didn't get their MVP contract before their season because they weren't drafted number one, so to speak. Like short of that, you just gotta outwork and outgrind. And when that opportunity comes, that's when the breakout goes. And I guess what we're talking about is, I want to connect my loop here, but the concept of determination over talent. There's lots of talented people who never achieve anything, right?
Yeah.
There's not that many determined people who don't.
Wow.
So, I mean, like, if you're sitting here saying like, well, I'm offended that I didn't get I'm not known as a number one draft pick, or I want my participation trophy, or whatever, however you want to dissect my earlier statement. But what I'm talking about is actually the positive. Not all of us were born number one drafted athletes. But for those of us who are determined, we know plenty of examples of talented people who don't make it. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I'd really have to sit and think about the ultra determined who aren't achieving some milestones. So I'll take determination. If in the absence of talent, I'll take determination 10 out of 10 times. What do you think is another sort of toxic? I mean,
related to that, because that was an amazing example to think about. Like Max Strus is a perfect example. The Paul guy, and now he's making $1 million compared to what his counterpart. Look at what Jimmy Butler's making, right? And so like, it's crazy, but he understands that sacrifice. So related to that, I think another thing we struggle with, which I think you'll agree and just illustrate and colorful your example even more, is my generation specifically is very entitled. Like, I think it's so toxic. Like why does that person have the better job than me? Why do you have more followers than me? Why are you doing this? Like this sense of entitlement, and then that entitlement starts spreading. What do you think?
I hope I have enough time for this. I swear he didn't tee me up for this.
We don't prep for these guys.
I was gonna go with like moderation over excessive pleasure, but I don't know if I'll have time for it.
Right here. How many times do we hear this at the club?
Yeah, that's the entitlement. So here's my concern. And this would be a volume series of how many books I want to write on this. When I was, this is a true story. When I grew up on Shetland Drive, I remember we were washing we'd wash the cars, manually wash the cars. And my dad and I were outside washing a car in the driveway. And there was a doctor who lived down the street, Dr. Paul Steck, and he had this bright red Corvette. It was beautiful. I mean, and he drove it for your attention. I mean, it was a wonderful car, and I mean, you couldn't help but stop and jaw drop and really admire this his success in this car, and the lesson stuck with me. My dad saw that in me. He saw, wait a minute, boy, son, let me teach you something. He never called me son, but he saw that it was a learning moment, a learning opportunity. And he was like, Dr. Steck went to school for a long time. He busted his butt, and he made serious sacrifices, and now he's found some success and has, the privilege of being able to buy a luxury automobile. And I was just, you just start nodding your head and thinking, man, I'm gonna work a little bit harder this upcoming fall year or whatever. So I think the difference now, and I'm not stereotyping or overgeneralizing, but now there's this envy of that red Corvette, and it's, man, why does he have that? Mm-hmm. Why don't I have that? Mm-hmm. And now Dr. Steck could. May not be surprised if he had a brick thrown through his window, right? Because people are upset, and maybe and whereas before, I think you need to say, you know what, I'm nowhere near that Corvette. I need to hunker down and work a little harder. Yeah. You know what? I'm going out. I'm staying out too late. I'm playing too many video games. I'm not studying as hard as I could. I'm skipping classes, whatever in my job, I'm just kind of doing what I have to do. Another year goes by, I get my check every 2 weeks. But I want that red Corvette. So I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to show up a little early. I'm going to go to the extra meeting. That's what should be drawn out by things. And my concern is now people are taking the opportunity to say, I'm not going to blame myself at all. I'm going to do me. But why does he or she have that? And I have a problem with that. And that is toxic. That is not, you're not going to convert that toxicity into a personal asset or describe it as powerful mind strength. So,
and the real life version of that is like, imagine you, right? Like you guys just had this super cool transformative experience at Joy District with Studio 54. Now, what if it was a great turnaround? I got to go. I know a lot of friends that got to go. And, what if you were just driving down and you saw Tao and you're like, well, shoot, how come we don't have the enterprise value of Tao? Look at all these locations. That's what we're doing as Gen Zs. We're like the comparison of the thief of joy. Like this thing. What if you did that? Like,
well, let me tell you, I pay attention to, I don't like the word, they are obviously competitors, but I don't like that word. They're colleagues. Anytime I'm speaking to staff or otherwise, it is our colleagues down the street or our colleagues in another city. I was out in wherever I'm traveling, and I get super motivated. It's the same idea from when my dad had that teaching moment. I see when somebody's doing really well, and I'm like, wow, we got to step up our game. This is really good. And that's why, when things are expensive and you're out and you're having such a good time, then you get the bill and you're like, ooh, I didn't mean to have that much fun. But that's credit to the place. They pulled that out of you. They really immersed themselves and got that out of you. And you've created these positive memories. And it's allowed me to convert, which is why you see promotions at Joy, which is why at a lot of our concepts, we're always running with different promotions, because a lot of that is, making sure we're not complacent, but equally is the inspiration and motivation of the market, the industry, colleagues, peers, down the road. So,
and I think that's a positive trait personality, right? Because we're talking about toxic traits, but when I had Gino here from Gino's and Marty's, and we were speaking about this idea of unreasonable hospitality, which you're very familiar with. It's a very popular book, and the idea behind unreasonable hospitality is creating connections with your guests. I've spent the last 2 birthdays at Joy District, and I could go to any single club, but for some reason it's like the personal connection that I have with you goes back to hospitality, right? It's like I've enjoyed the experience going back there because not only of our friendship and what we're doing in business, but now just in general, the hospitality, the home connection. And that's generally shows when you speak about, instead of saying F this competitor, F that, you're treating them as colleagues. You're embodying what it means to be in hospitality.
Well, you've described the same set of facts. You're just taking a very different lens. Right? Are we taking this as motivation, inspiration, or are we taking this through a toxic, anti-competitive, the haves versus the have-nots? And are you throwing a brick through Dr. Steck's window? Mm-hmm. I think the set of circumstances is the same. It's how you choose to perceive them.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up 30-Minute You, for the conclusion here, we just spent time talking about positive mindsets and toxic personalities. Let's ask you for the ending hot take here. We spoke about my toxic personalities, right? As not me, Sameer, but Gen Zs. Tell us, like Carmen, the toxic personalities you look for in relationships, love life. What are toxic traits or toxic personalities to watch the heck out for when you are looking for a romantic partner? I'm actually really curious.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. I got to do it somewhat quickly. Very cool. So I've been a bachelor for a large portion of my life, and as a result, have been in a number of dating relationships, just time over experience. And the cool thing is, I've kept lasting relationships beyond the dating experience.
Even after you broke up?
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that's actually genuine. And I guess I could say I pride myself in that, or at least that's a goal. But that said, women like to date men. and you know, so often men can act like boys. And I think there's this really romantic intimacy in the dance between being confident and being emotional. And there's times when women want to see both. You know, you can't just be the arrogant, confident, flippant, like, I'm just going to leave you on red. And you can't just be the tough, you know, machismo. You got to sometimes be emotional. Now, the other side is if you're always emotional, you're going to get dumped because he's not as confident. But the toxicity is the younger generations, like, hey, if I send a text, and I'll use myself as an example. I know if I send a text and I get a response like 3 days later, and it's like, oh, hey, missed this, been crazy. Like, like our phone is an extension of our hand at all times. Like, or the line, I'm just not a good texter. It's like every Gen Z on the planet is a good texter. Like that, like that's you know, just be honest or just completely ghost. You know, don't feel the need. You know, if it's not going to go anywhere, just ghost. Yeah. That's. I'd rather that than
instead of stringing along.
Yeah, or just like the horrible insult of like, oh, I'm just sorry I missed this. You know, so. But yeah, there's my take on it.
That's the hot take. Oh, we're gonna have to do a whole nother episode just on that now because I gotta pick your brain on that full surgery. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for coming back to 30 Minute You. I will post the links in the description for the clothes that we have here, the hats for the brand. And Carmen, I'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.